Hello,
Hi.
welcome Rachel.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Adam from SoiLife, and today we're going to be talking to Rachel from Life a Little Greener, who is an amazing community member here in Murwillumbah in our local area,
Yes.
and who does some really great things in gardening and landscapes and
Yeah,
syntropics and
all of it.
agroforestry.
All of it combined.
Yes, all those beautiful things. And we're going to be talking a little bit about your journey. But if you'd like to introduce yourself, that'd be wonderful.
All right. So hi, my name's Rachel. I own Life a Little Greener. So I am a holistic property manager. So I do veggie gardens, orchards, some organic bush regeneration with a local not-for-profit called Blue Forest Earth. And I am a land share farmer on a local farm called Ravens Place Farm, which is a small-scale, community-focused regenerative farm.
Beautiful.
So thank you for having me today.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure. Yeah, we love what you do, Rachel. So
Thank you.
we're so glad to have you here
Thank you.
being a part of our community,
Thanks.
our SoiLife world,
Yes,
as well as
SoiLife community.
why don't we, if we could start with your beginning, like the start of your gardening world. Like, did it happen when you were a child, a teenager?
So I have some small memories of being in the farm, like being in the backyard working in the veggie garden with my pop and with my mum.
Yeah.
But I definitely was not a gardener until I moved back to Australia. So
Okay.
yeah, I've lived in some major cities in Australia, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and in Wollongbar for quite some time, but moved to Hong Kong when I was 24 with my partner.
Yep.
And yeah, that was definitely a different experience.
Right.
Have you been to Hong Kong?
I have. Yeah. It's all upright.
Yeah, it is. It's one of
beautiful though.
It is really stunning. It's also filthy and toxic.
Yes.
And so it was amazing. We were living there. We were traveling a lot, and then I had kids there.
Yeah.
And so definitely after having kids, it changed my whole perspective on my life and the environment and the planet that we're living in.
Yeah.
And so
kids will do that, won't they?
Yeah, it was a really sudden shift, especially living in such a toxic environment. I distinctly remember we couldn't walk on the beach because the medical waste would wash up.
Oh, no way.
And so we're talking about liposuction bags still full of fat with needles on it, hypodermic needles, all of it, syringes. So we couldn't walk on the beach without having to wear shoes. So we just didn't go to the beach.
Yeah.
And then there was a day where it was national, Hong Kong, walk to school day.
Yep.
So reduce public transport, walk to school. And they then sent a warning that the pollution levels were so high that they suggested not leaving the house. So I'm like, this is where it's a highly polluted environment with so much waste. And it was just really challenging to have kids growing up there.
Yeah, totally.
And so we made the decision when my youngest was 3 months old that we'd move back to Australia. And so we did. And then we were really lucky to come back to Murwillumbah, where our families are from. And we bought 5 acres just outside of Murwillumbah. And it was a really beautiful location, nice and hidden, really nice. It didn't have a view, doesn't need one because we're nice and secluded. And then that's where my journey started. I had all of this space and I had all of this time with 2 small children. And I was like, right, what can I do to do better? And so this was growing my own food, living a low tox, low waste environment, trying to do the best that I could for my kids.
Sure. And were you just doing your own sort of finding out, your own, you know, looking into all the different ways that you could reduce your waste, looking into ways you could grow?
Yeah, I was just doing a lot of research. I'm really great at researching, and I do like to read a lot of scientific studies. And so I'd just be going in and reading all of the studies and seeing what was the best approach for whatever I was doing, especially with growing. And so my partner's family come from conventional farming, and so they were sugarcane farmers.
Okay, in this area?
In this area, so in Murwillumbah. And so then using his knowledge to try and then grow things, and I realized it wasn't working. It just wasn't working. I was given, my first veggie garden was made out of treated pine and filled with soil that we got from a cane paddock.
Okay.
And it was disgusting. It sat there unused for 3 years until I was like, it needs to go. So like I've got photos of it, like I'm not, and I've shown people on my Instagram that it's a journey. We all start somewhere. This is where I started because I thought that this was right. And then when I realized that actually, no, that's not the best for my family, let's change direction. And so then we did. And so then they all came out, and now I use hardwood, like from camphor, which is an invasive weed in our area. So I've got a lot of camphor in the paddock, so I can take some camphor down, use that to make bedding. And then that way I'm keeping, not only am I closing my cycle, but I'm also removing invasive weed. And so lots of research, I have done some study in it as well.
What study have you done?
So I've got a certificate in nutrition farming and organic growing, and then I'm also doing permaculture, landscape design, horticulture, and ecosystem and conservation management.
A few things on the go.
Yes, I do. I am a nerd. I do like to study and read a lot and just keep my mind really active.
There's nothing wrong with being a gardening nerd.
No.
Yeah, we're into that too.
But I think it's really amazing to kind of understand the world that we're walking on, right? So it's not just the world that we're living in, but also the world beneath the soil, which is like our life force. Right? The answer is always soil. I think what's the question? The answer is always soil.
And covering your soil, protecting your soil,
nurturing
your soil.
Yeah, loving your soil.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can we just go back to you mentioned you use camphor. I think we get a lot of questions about camphor, and people are worried about the off-gassing and it releasing chemicals into their veggie beds. Have you ever found that?
No. And I know it is a big question that I get asked, especially with camphor wood chip as well, because there is a chemical like in the leaves, which is allelopathic, so it can prevent the growth of other things. But so far, I found really great results. Like I've got a nice big pile of wood chip at home at the moment that's still super biologically active. It's got native oysters, like native oyster mushrooms, growing out of it already, right? And so then if I know that it's already housing these really beautiful microorganisms, and I can transfer those into, if you are worried, you can let it sit and let it wash out.
That's what we recommend as well. Like just treat it like a compost pile. You know, get some more organic material in there if you can, and turn it.
And it's a really slow degradation, right? Especially with those full camphor logs that I'm using, because some of them are like massive. And so it's not like I'm putting a whole heap of chemical into my bed. It's sitting there, and you should see like the mushrooms I've got growing out of it now is insane. And they're all native, like naturally occurring mushies. And so we're getting that decomposition of organic matter within the landscape already, which is then, even though they're saprophytic fungi and they're not necessarily directly feeding the plants, they're distributing those nutrients throughout the system. And
they're decomposing.
Exactly. So it's still beneficial.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a great reuse of resources that are a pest tree, especially in our area. And they create beautiful edging because they grow nice and straight, those little...
Oh, they do. I love my veggie garden. Like, it's stunning. And it's so eclectic, and it's messy, and it's really productive at the moment too, which I'm loving.
That's probably is a good question. Do you find then it's better to plant out a diverse range of plants in your veggie bed, or do you separate it into your little patches of, spinach, strawberries, snow peas? What do you do?
No, I'm a massive fan of biodiversity. So biodiversity above ground is biodiversity below ground. And so if you ever come for a walk through my garden, you can see that all of my beds would probably at least have 5 to 10 different species within the space. And then you can still make it aesthetically beautiful. So I've recently planted one bed out it's got kale, chickpeas, lettuce, coriander, dill, snow peas, all in this one bed. And I did do it in straight lines, which is really weird for me because usually I just throw stuff in. And it looks amazing, and it's so lush, and it still has those straight lines, which some people look for in those veggie gardens.
They do.
Which is fine. Like, you can,
I think if you're doing it with the structure and understanding the growth habit of those plants, that can work really well. But if you're planting things that a little bit shorter in amongst some taller things,
they're not going to get any light.
They're not going to get any light. It's not going to work so well. Because I've used quite a lot of IBCs to build 1 by 1 meter veggie beds and wicking beds with those, and densely planting them, they just thrive. They do better than if I've got it sparsely planted,
Yeah.
they go nuts.
It's the interconnectedness of the rhizosphere of all of those different species, right?
Yep.
It's the stepping away from those monoculture, because if you've got a singular crop of a plant, you're going to get a singular crop of a microbiome, and then that's when you might find that you get a fungal disease that wipes out your entire crop, or a pest comes through and just smashes everything, because there's no like resilience within the system.
Sure,
right?
unless they're putting out huge amounts of potent chemicals like the pine forests of the tundra in the northern hemisphere, they can survive as a monoculture because they're so toxic.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
Nothing else lives there. Nothing else can live there.
Yeah.
Whereas, in our region, in our part of the world, we need diversity.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to thrive under the ground as well as above the ground.
Yeah,
like you say.
absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah.
So I just distinctly remember, so if anyone's gone to Hong Kong, they can understand that it's really expensive. And so the price was really challenging for me. And so everyone was like, just shop at the markets. Just go to the wet markets. You can buy food really cheap there. And I was like, okay. And then an article came across, and I read this article, and it was from the BBC, and it had a map, and it was a map of soil contamination in China. And it was a scale of like light red through to black. And they're like, yeah, just shop at the wet markets. All the food comes from Shenzhen. It's super close. It hasn't traveled very far. And then on this map, the blackest place was Shenzhen.
Wow.
And I was like, I can't give my kids food that's grown in contaminated soil.
Yeah.
I can't. And then I was like, okay, so now I'm going to try and do the best that I can and buy food that's not from China. And so then so a cucumber was $7, and it was $7 Australian dollars.
Wow.
It was wrapped in plastic on a
tray
to protect it.
Yep.
And so then like absolutely everything came wrapped in plastic. And so then it was this moral dilemma for me that I can either choose to buy food that's doesn't have plastic on it but grown in contaminated soil, which I don't know how they've been spraying it, or I can buy it from another country where I think maybe the standards are a little bit better. I know the soil's not as contaminated or not contaminated, but it has to travel a really long way to get here.
Yeah.
And it's plastic everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like the whole every time I went shopping was this like pull and tear of which way am I going to go?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm spending $7 on a cucumber, $10 on a tray. It was probably more than $10 on a tray, but then we wouldn't be buying anything that was in season because it was all shipped from over the country, all over the world, sorry. And so, reading that article was just like, that's the one point, that was the turning point for me, being like, I need to find a better way.
Yeah.
And then when we moved back to Australia, I was so thankful that I had this abundance around me.
Yeah.
Like we're in such a beautiful growing region with so much food and so many amazing farms, like small scale farmers, large scale organic farmers. Like we are just so blessed to be in such a beautiful region.
We are. And even so, a lot of our farmers are still using conventional style farming. So they're still putting out a lot of chemicals, a lot of, mineral and synthetic fertilizers.
Yeah.
So yes,
I mean, every time I drive home, I literally drive through walls of sugarcane farms. Yeah. And then there's times where I'm like literally watching the topsoil blow away.
Yeah, or wash away, with the rainfall that we have here.
Yeah,
the amount of rain. They're going to dig out the cane drains because they're full of sediment.
I'm like, but stop digging the cane drains out and leave the vegetation in situ so we can filter that. Like but it's unfortunately the way that system is set up so that it's a profit orientated system. Yeah. It's not a food production system for the benefit of the planet.
But is it profitable to grow sugarcane?
No, it is for the sugar mill.
The sugar mill, yeah.
It's not for the farmers.
Not for the grower.
Which is unfortunate. Yeah. And so then they're stuck in this cycle, and that's all that they've been taught, and so then that's how it happens for them.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, they've got to put food on their tables. They've got to feed their family, and so they're doing what they can.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's just not enough support to allow them to make any changes.
No. Well, that's where we like to support our farmers to be able to grow biologically healthy soil.
Yeah.
Which then improves their yields, improves the flavour of their products.
Yeah, 100%.
And their vegetables and their produce.
And the nutrient density. Like, let's talk about that.
The nutrients, the nutrients go up. We don't want to. We see there's an opportunity for a mix of both.
Yeah.
Because it is hard to build that resilience into a conventional farm, into a new farming method.
And it doesn't happen overnight.
And it doesn't. It takes years.
Yeah.
So why not transition and utilize what you already know, but build in some other biology to really support that system and get more nutrients into your crops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it took some time to me to convince Rob to not continue to spray glyphosate at my house.
Yep.
Like it was because that's what he was taught.
Yeah.
When we moved back 6 years ago, I'm going to spray the boundaries. I'm going to spray the fence lines. I'm going to do this. I'm going to spray that. I'm going to put bin dye all over the yard. And I'm like, no, our kids run on that yard barefoot.
Yeah.
Like really think about it.
Yeah.
But bindies, I'm like, well, there's other ways.
Yes.
Like I can tell, like we burn our bindies out on the main paddock, like on where the lawn is, and we've been doing it for 2 years, and now we've got no bindies.
That's fantastic.
Right?
Yeah.
In the paddock, like in the orchard, I run a multi-species cover crop through the orchard. No bindies. I've got one patch of bindies at the moment, which is in quite a shaded area that doesn't, like the grass isn't growing as well. So I'm like, right, we've got to work on that patch. Let's look at reseeding that area, fixing it so that we don't have bindies. I'm like, I understand that they're not ideal. They hurt when you step on them, especially when you're never wearing shoes.
Yes.
But I mean, it's as long as I'd rather step on a bindi than step on a chemical that's absorbed into my feet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like our competition is what I'm trying to get to. You know, is so important in those systems.
Yeah.
If you can outcompete those pest species, they just don't persist.
No.
But if you allow them to proliferate by clearing all your vegetation, the first thing that's going to come back is the weeds.
Yeah.
The ones that you don't want.
Well, they're trying it. There's a purpose, right? So whenever a weed I say a weed species because a weed is just something that we don't want growing there. And I really want to step away from the idea, like changing our perspective, because people are like, oh, they're weeds, they need to go. And it's like, well, how can we, number one, a lot of them are edible.
Yeah.
Like, let's change our perspective on, yes, they can be, or the reason why they've been considered a weed is because they overtake pasture.
Yes.
And so it's a pasture weed, which impacts cattle.
Or the cattle don't preferentially eat them, but they will.
Yeah.
If you graze properly.
Yeah. If you've got that intensive grazing system.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. And so, like, if you have an understanding of what that weed is telling you in that space.
Could be a change in pH.
Exactly.
Could be a cry for,
organic matter. Right. Compaction. Maybe the soil's too compact. Like all of these different things so that you can go, okay, I can amend the soil in this capacity, which can help alleviate this weed. Or changing our perspective, being like, actually, I don't need to get rid of it. Like a lot of people I've got clover growing through my lawn, but I want to have that immaculate lawn. It's like, well, how can we be like, what's wrong with having a really beautiful lawn that has clover kind of?
It's a great pollinator attractor.
Yeah.
It's got so much value.
Right.
Yeah. And if you do have animals, actually, even a sick dog will chew on a bit of clover as well as a bit of grass because it will help its gut.
Yeah.
There are benefits to all those things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, my dog likes to graze on my cover crop.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of it is edible. So she's out there eating veg and the snow for the peas that are on it. She loves it.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What about, what are some of the mistakes that you made when you first, you've already spoken about, your soil.
Yeah. So number one definitely was finding, and I was at the point I was just learning about treated timber and I was told that it wasn't treated, but then I was like, it's treated. So using treated timber because it does contain arsenic.
Yep.
And so even though they say that it doesn't leach, it leaches, but not very far into the soil. My concern was that I can't control where the root zone is going. So
and then some people will put it like a plastic liner.
Yeah.
And then you're adding plastic to your system.
Yeah. So it's like, what can I do to, number one, not introduce plastic, and number two, not introduce treated timber.
Yep.
And then getting the wrong, I got soil, like dirt, not compost.
Almost subsoil.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Like it was great. It grew a really great crop for the first year. And I'm like, that's probably because of all the residual synthetics that it had in it.
Yeah.
And then once that one crop was done, like it was it, I was fighting to try and grow good food.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was so challenging. And it was like, what the fuck am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Like, why am I not getting this?
Yeah.
I'm like reading all these books and I'm doing all the stuff and I'm multi-species cropping and it still wasn't working. And then I was like, look at like pick it, and it just literally I'd pick up a handful and it'd fall apart, and I was like, oh,
And
there's
life
no
in it.
organic matter. And so then I was already at the time like starting to build beds around it. So I went from having 3 beds to now like 25. But in that time, like the other beds were doing a lot better, and this one bed was just shit house. Like I'd also not done a layering system, right?
Right.
When you're filling a garden bed, people are like, not like, why are you layering it? Why are you not filling it up with? And I'm like, not only does it add biodiversity in the bottom and feed those microbes, it also allows for that slumpage so that you can continue to add organic matter as the time progresses, so that you're still continually feeding the system. I didn't do that with this bed. And so then it literally just sat at the one level, and I tried to like dig it out, and it was just hard work.
It's a nightmare, isn't it?
And so then last year I was like, it has to go. Get rid of it. And it was like a $2,500 bed.
Oh, wow.
Like it was an expensive bed. And I was like,
can't do this anymore.
I can't. I'm like, and then I've literally taken it out now, and then I've replaced it with these 2 beautiful reclaimed camphor beds. So productive. And it was just like, it was like the penny had dropped, and I was like, this is amazing. Like this is my structure now, and I'm going to do this every time, and it's going to work really well. So
with that, did you do the lasagna layering?
So I do like a sort of, like I don't use the, like, how do you say it? The Horden culture, like the Huden culture.
Oh, Hugel culture.
Yeah, Hugel culture. But I steal elements from that. Like it's all about inspiration for me. I get all of my information from everyone else, and I use what works for me and what I've got available, so I don't have to spend a lot of money. So I've got a lot of palm fronds on site, so they're great for fungal activity. Sticks, twigs. I've got like a swamp down the bottom of my paddock. And so I go down there and I steal like I find that especially after the 2022 flooding, we lost a few tallow woods, and so they've dropped a lot of limbs, and so I take all of that up. So I'll do logs, leaf litter, manure. So I'll do chicken manure, cow manure, goat manure.
And has that been composted?
No, because I'm doing it in the bottom.
Putting it in the bottom.
Putting it in the bottom. So chicken manure is super hot, so I'll make sure that I'm always composting that first if I intend on top dressing. But when I'm building a bed, I'll use fresh because I know it's at the bottom, and I'm going to allow it to start digesting within that space.
It's safe in there.
It's safer in there. It's not going to burn my plants. Goat, alpaca, and sheep manure is safe enough to be added to your bed fresh.
It's a cold manure.
Yeah, it is a cold manure. So it's not very often that I do it though, because I've generally got my bed set up in a point that I don't need to top dress until the change of season. Right? And so, and even then I won't top dress very often unless there's a lot of slumpage or I know that I need to add some compost. Generally I'll add some chicken, like some pelletized chicken manure, or I'll compost when I'm planting.
So what would be your top 3 or 5 things for building a garden bed that would make that, you have readily around in your local area? That you would use.
So logs, like I said, the fresh manures, cardboard, paper, leaf litter, coffee grinds, which you can get for free from cafes. And then I'll also, if I've got like some, because I'm constantly changing, I'll get an old bed that's got some old soil in it and then add that to save a bit of money, because that's a big thing, is that
just refresh the soil?
Just to refresh, because I know, right, worm castings is another one. So I'm going to add worm castings.
And you've got your own worm farms?
I do. I've got 3 worm farms. And then I'll either buy a high quality compost, which will be SoiLife's usually SoiLife compost, and then or I'll use my own homemade stuff depending on how
much volume
I have, because I do I've got 6 composting bays, and so I try and turn over as much organic matter as I can, but at the capacity at which I'm growing, it's just not enough. And I think it's okay to bring in an external input, especially when and it's when we talk about nutrient cycling and depending on how complex we want to get. I know I'm bringing in a good quality organic input, and that's okay, because then I'm going to redistribute that in my nutrient cycle. So that's generally the formula that I'll use. I'll also probably inoculate with SoiLife, and then I generally, depending on the time that I've got, I'll either fill it, mulch it, plant it later, or I'll fill it, mulch it, plant it on the day.
Yeah, lovely.
But again, I've got 3 small children. and I'm alone 75 to 80% of the time.
Yeah.
So it just happens instead. It happens when it happens.
Happens when it happens.
Yeah. I mean,
so if you were to do a couple of layers and then have to walk away for a day, what would you do?
leave it.
Yeah, you just leave it.
I'm so bad.
Exactly.
So literally at the moment, if you go to my house, I've got one garden bed that I've just started, and I managed to get the logs in, the chicken manure, and now I've added all of the all of my snow peas, all of that old vegetation. I've already started adding that, and then I've got coffee grinds there going in as well.
Great.
And then number one, financially, when I can afford to buy the compost to go in it,
yep.
I'll add that.
Yep.
And so, but right now it's just sitting there.
But it'll start to accumulate some of that biology.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pulling in microbes. It's pulling in fungi.
Yeah.
It's still breaking down.
Yeah, 100%.
There's all kinds
and
of things
what I'm really loving is that because I'm taking things from within my own environment, right? Those logs that I'm bringing up from the paddock, I'm introducing indigenous microorganisms from the space already.
Yeah.
Right? Which are going to do the best in my area.
Yes.
And so then I'm already inoculating my bed with those. And then that can just sit down and begin, and it's still decomposing anyway, because it was decomposing down in the paddock. I've just moved it to start decomposing up in the veggie garden. And I think making sure that I'm not putting too much pressure on myself, because I also run a business. And I have a farm and my own farm, and then I work with a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
And so like allocating, not being like, it's okay if it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It'll happen when it happens.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what else you're doing besides the amazing gardening that you do at your own place. Let's talk about some of the other things. So you've got not-for-profits.
Yeah. So I was very lucky. So being in the position that I'm in, so Life a Little Greener offers holistic property management. So we also do some level of chemical-free maintenance and management of properties. So we'll come in and we'll assess the property. We'll do weeding, and we'll general maintenance, but we use a holistic approach. And then we also recommend revegetation, so on and so forth. But within this space, I found that there was a lack of ability to treat some of these larger weeds. So these species that are overtaking and not allowing natives to thrive.
Okay.
And so then I was like, there has to be another option. And then that's when I found We Forest Earth and Pierre and Tree.
Yep.
And so January this year, I came on to We Forest Earth. And so We Forest Earth is a not-for-profit, and we provide organic bush regeneration using endemic strains of mycelium, which means, so we use native edible and medicinal mushrooms to phase out woody weeds and revegetate. So the conventional approach of bush regen is very chemical based.
It is,
And there's a lot of glyphosate use, and that was definitely one of my no-goes.
Scrape and paint.
Yeah.
Cut and
and so this approach just means that not only is there it's a gradual phase out as well. So that's one thing that we've got to be really mindful of, is that when you do the direct inject, or what will happen is you'll get a sudden canopy drop, and then there's a sudden flush of weeds underneath.
Yes.
And so then they'll just come and spray again.
Yes.
And so then not only are you spraying all the weed species out, but you're also spraying out all of those native...
all those propagules that are trying to take advantage of the new light.
Exactly. And so they just go and blanket spray everything, or they don't go and do anything, and you've just got this weed burden underneath.
Yes.
And so this slow canopy transfer means that we can come through afterwards, and we can manage the understory a lot better. And so we can see when the natives are coming through, and we can take out any weed species. But I think the kicker is that we're growing food and medicine. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so it's really cool. It's such an innovative approach that Pierre and Troy have been working on. So it's not that we've just started it. It's the boys have been working on it for a really long time.
Yeah.
And we're hosting workshops, and we're sharing the information, and we're trying to get this information out to people so that they can start doing it on their own property.
Amazing.
Because we're coming to a point now where people want chemical-free options.
Yes.
And they want, and food security, right? So if we can kind of provide both of those.
Yeah.
But also,
what are the timeframes involved in that sort of regen work?
So it really depends on the size of the tree. So the ring barking process can take anywhere from, these little ones can be 6 months, whereas the larger ones can take a few years.
Okay.
And so we can come through and we'll manage, and then we'll come through and we'll take out all the coppicing, which is like the undergrowth below the ringbark.
Yep.
And then like we can revegetate at the same time as well. So then
Right.
it's like a more of an assisted natural revegetation as opposed
Gotcha.
to like a pure revegetation.
So then at the same time, you've ringbarked your camphor.
Mhm.
You're coming back doing some of that understory work and allowing the natives to come through.
Mhm.
And you've also got mushrooms growing
Yeah, food production.
off the camphor.
Mhm.
So I guess, even if it takes a year or 2 years, the benefits start to come
Yeah.
through quite quickly.
Yeah.
And how long does it take for the mycelium to really take hold?
So it just, again, depends on the size of the
Right.
species that we're inoculating. So
Yeah.
we've got trees that are like that size
Mm,
and they're fruiting within 6 months,
wow.
right? And so it's a really tailored approach as well. So it'll be based on the landholder and this
Mhm.
like the area that they're revegetating. And if they visit the area a lot, then
Gotcha.
we can choose a culinary species. Whereas if they're not visiting as often, we can look at the more medicinal, longer lasting
Okay, longer
species like
lasting,
turkey tail and the native reishi.
Lovely. Wow.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I'm so proud to be working with these guys. Like
I bet.
it makes me really happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so in the same breath, I also really love growing food and love growing food for people. And food is medicine. And
Absolutely.
a lot of the community don't have access to the food.
Yeah.
Or good quality organic food.
Or food that hasn't travelled
Really long distances.
long distance,
Yeah.
food that isn't pesticide, sprayed, food that isn't, gassed, food that isn't
Yeah.
treated.
Yeah. I was actually listening to a really great podcast the other day, and they've got they're doing it's in the States, and it's a project called Food is Medicine, and they're actually using it's a brilliant project that it's an initiative that they're doing, and they've taken these small rural communities and they're actually feeding them with locally sourced regeneratively grown food for a period of 7 weeks, and it's just the food that they're treating them, and they've shown like all of these impacts on the reduction in diabetes, and like it's insane. And I was like, this is such an incredible project that is allowing these people that generally don't have access to food like this.
There's no reason why we can't be doing this in our communities.
Well, that's where Raven Place Farm comes into play. So Michelle is a landowner. I'm a land share farmer there. So I farm on her land, and our goal is to make organic food financially available to everyone.
Amazing.
And so our goal is to grow a section that we donate directly to the community centre.
Yep.
So then that way they can distribute it through their channels how they want.
Yep.
And then the other section of the farm, we plan on growing food that we can sell direct to the community at a reduced rate.
That's so good. Is there any way anyone can help with this?
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important to get up front.
Yeah.
Is support. You need support to be able to bring this to our communities, because it's such a beautiful and necessary project.
Yeah, so we're trying to work with some ideas. So we're looking at like sponsoring a bed, so someone can pay a small fee per month, and then that would sponsor the bed. So then that will pay for things like a small amount of labour to go towards working the beds, seeds, seedlings, and just the management throughout. And so
and they can just contact you directly.
Yeah, they can contact me, and then we can have a chat about what works best for them.
Yeah.
I'm pretty flexible. And I really want to step away from the idea that everything has to be money.
Yeah.
You can come and help me on the farm too if you want to come and move compost. Or
so physical support is always welcome.
Physical support is 100%. Like it gets lonely sometimes when I'm and it's just me
talking to the plants.
Yeah, I do. I just sit there and I'm like, or I sing and dance. Like it's very I love it. I love what I do. But if you want to come and help me, because then not only then, I'll also not shut up about growing food.
Yeah.
And so then
you could learn so much at the same time.
Yeah. Learn some stuff and then just sit
go.
there and talk to me. And I mean, I like to think of it as slow, intentional farming. And so there's no heavy machinery. It's a lot of wheelbarrows. It's a lot of, it's a lot of wheelbarrowing. It's a lot of, but we're small scale. I really want to kind of stress that it's not a massive space. But you don't need a lot of massive space to
It's
grow.
not a gigantic farm. It's a
I think I've got 2 acres.
Square meters? Oh,
2 acres.
There you go.
Yeah. And so we've got bananas, we've got which are already existing. So working with the existing areas, and then we're building an intensive market garden and some diverse food forests to then kind of grow your like more perennial species within
Sure.
that space.
And what if someone else wanted to do this on their property and they knew people that wanted to help? Is that something you could assist with?
So I do offer consulting services as well.
Yeah, great.
That's through Life a Little Greener.
Yep.
And so I'm happy to come out and have a chat. We can talk about, like, in the holistic property management, we look at all elements of the property. So I always believe that if we're taking from the earth by growing food, we have to give back. And so there'll be some element of revegetation in the space, especially with endemic, rare and endangered species. I'm always going to throw a few from the area. That's endemic species from the area. But then it's always then it's you can then grow food for the community in your own little area. And so then it's more about linking communities together, sharing knowledge and education and skills so that we can all work together and grow and learn and connect with the earth.
That sounds amazing. It is amazing. What you do is just so crucial. And
thank you.
We bow down to all the things you do, Rachel.
Well, thank you for providing a really great product that allows me to.
No worries.
It's definitely whenever in my planting schedule, I always will do a root soak, especially when I'm buying products from, because I still support local nurseries as well. So I don't necessarily grow all of my own seedlings. I'll try and support local as best I can. And so
there's some great growers out there.
100%. And so then growing those, I'll always soak those in SoiLife and then I'll inoculate and
so it helps a little bit with the transplant shock.
Yeah, it does, 100%.
Yeah.
And especially it's inoculating that rhizosphere that's lacking because they've been grown and fertigated with synthetics. Yeah. And so then we want to re-inoculate that root zone so that there's more of that ability to start the nutrient transfer.
Exactly.
Before. Yeah.
Plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. That's what we're all about.
Yeah.
Excellent. I've loved hearing about your journey into food
farming
and where you're at now. I'd really like to talk to you more and delve a little deeper into some of these subjects. And if we can talk to you again soon.
Of course. You know I love to talk.
We love talking to you. So that's great. It works really well.
So we've got all the socials. So we're on Life a Little Greener, so like.a.little.greener, lots of dots. If you wanted to follow along with We Forest Earth, it's at We Forest Earth, and you can also go to weforestearth.com. Raven Place Farm is on Instagram as well, raven.place.farm.
And amazing food at Raven Place
Yes.
Farm.
Oh my God. Best gyoza. So for Raven Place, Clothiers Creek Road, you can see us on the corner. So as you're driving from Cabba through to Murbar, you can see the farm being developed on the corner there.
You can't drive past.
You can't. You have to stop.
It's
So we're still early stages. I think that's really important to kind of. We're growing. I was a bit late to the party getting my brassicas in, but that's fine. I'm trying hard. But I've already started getting.
I've only got a few things on.
I know. But I mean, we're gonna start having a lot more. I just planted up more seeds. We put in yesterday. I put in corn, okra, support species, some tomatoes. Zooks are already in.
Wow. There's a lot.
Yeah, and it's not a massive big space yet, and so I'm really excited. Like it's going to be beautiful. And we're hosting a workshop. Like we're hosting workshops with We Forest Earth, and we're hoping to provide more workshops for the community in other skill-based areas.
Where can people find out about those? Are they available?
So all over the socials. I'm everywhere.
Yep.
And through our website as well with We Forest Earth.
All right. Well, we'll make sure that's in the notes as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks so much for coming.
No worries.
And having a chat. And
Time to get back to work.
It is. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks very much.
So thanks for watching. I've really appreciated you guys coming along. If you could like and subscribe, that'd be super helpful. And there's lots of other content as well that you can get around. And we're also going to be launching our podcast on Spotify, so you can listen to it and watch it on YouTube. So we'll see you next time.